Hey folks, welcome back to Game Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're talking about Chronos: The New Dawn. This is a new game that released roughly about, I want to say 3 weeks ago? No, it'd be 4 weeks ago, so about a month. And this is an initial look. This is not a final review. What I'm going to be doing is this is just to have my thoughts so far after roughly 7 hours getting through one of the first big sections of the story in the game. And I'm just sharing my thoughts, and yeah, I'll have a final review when I've finished the game. And you guys actually voted for this, so thank you for that. You can be able to vote for the next game in 26 in January. But yeah, I'll go over the story, I'll go over the mechanics, I'll go over the horror aspects of the game, I'll go over performance, the cost, and how it's sold. And then, yeah, you guys get to decide if the game's for you or not. That's the whole point of these. So the story, in short, is just a time traveler to rescue people in the past. About what they know about a disease that is basically either spread through the region or spread through the world. We're currently in Poland, and so I don't know if we're necessarily going to stay there. I think we will, but we might kind of blip around a little bit. But yeah, we're in Poland because that's where ground zero seems to be. And there's mystery there. We go into the game, we don't really know a whole lot. We're just working on kind of piecing some things together. So you can listen to some audio files. You can read some little journals or letters. And again, there's not like a ton of reading or anything, but yeah, you can kind of piece some of this together and figure out what it was like for some of the residents in some of this area. So you learn as you go, and it is a little slow, I would say, for the story itself. The story isn't really going to be grabbing you until maybe you get actually toward the end of your first section of the game where you're extracting your first real character, because that's when it actually starts kind of getting interested for me, because I'm learning a little more. I'm getting something to kind of nibble on, and that's kind of nice. The mechanics in the game, pretty good for a survival game. So yeah, this is a horror survival game. And yeah, it's pretty good for a survival game. So even on normal, I'm struggling to have enough resources and ammo to be able to defend myself, to make it to the next room or make it out of the building or whatever. Also, being able to use environmental things is pretty necessary, especially in some areas. But like, you have limited ammo, you have limited health, you have limited resources, and it really pays off to explore. And or even going back and being able to unlock other doors, because sometimes you'll find keys or you'll find other tools to open doors or break down certain stuff. And so yeah, it really does pay off. So take the time to actually do that. Also, we do have a mild crafting system so far. Basically, you can craft different ammunition, or you can craft health packs, and or you can also craft flamer fuel, which is like something you can use in a pinch, which is nice. But again, it's not like you get a ton of these resources necessarily. There's certainly some stockpiles so in some places, which is why it pays off to actually explore and do all of the things you can to get as much as you can. But you also have a limited inventory system. So you can't hoard like you want, and you have to choose what you're going to craft and how much and when and all of that stuff. So there's a little bit of inventory management there, and then you also have to pick and choose what you're actually going to craft and when. And I'm trying to play in a way so that I'm making my decision and I'm living with it, because you could just like reach a save point and then save and then continue on, but it's not like you can save whenever you wish. There's just specific save points that you have to get to. There are checkpoints to a degree where there's like an auto save. There are a few of those, but generally speaking, you generally want to save and then craft your stuff or deal with your inventory and then move on. If you're sure with your decision, then go ahead and save after you've done all of that. Because yeah, sometimes when you come back, like for me personally, I have a busy life, and I do other stuff for the channel as well. So yeah, when I come back, it's not like I'm playing Chronos every single day. So yeah, it's just nice to be able to sometimes save after I've done some of that stuff. Otherwise, I'll forget. So yeah, the survival mechanics are pretty good. They're not overly bearing, but they definitely add a really important element to the game that helps make it what it is. The horror side of the game. The thing is that all aspects are there, yet it doesn't quite deliver. And let me go over why. So the elements that we have is that you have a flashlight like on the left side of your character, and your camera is on the right side of your character over in third person. And the thing that can get frustrating is that since your camera's on the right side and your flashlight's on the left, sometimes you can kind of see something around a corner, but your flashlight is unable to highlight it. So you have to move out a little bit more and take a little bit more risk with getting injured or jump scared or whatever with something that can be around the corner. And sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes the game does like to play with you a little bit, but it is just a little bit. Also, too, it's dark. So my first region I was in, it was pretty dark where I was almost all the time, so it was kind of hard to see. I had to rely on my flashlight a lot. The current environment that I'm in is that it's brighter outside, but I have a sandstorm going on. So I still can't see. So there's very much environments where it's difficult to see and also to see very far. I also feel like the third person body cam that you have over the shoulder is not really in an optimal spot. It's pulled back a little bit from your character so that actually some of your body and your arms and your weapon in your hands is kind of blocking your view, roughly, 15 to 20% of your screen. So sometimes it can be really difficult to see to the left. It can be and then it can also be difficult to see to the right. So it can be difficult to see to the left because your body's in the way and then the camera's on your left side. The other aspect is that it's hard to see to the right because your camera's on the right side of your body. So you have to move your character possibly in harm's way before your camera can actually see anything. So they're really playing both angles there to try to make it difficult in certain situations. Also, we have unsteady aim. And boy, let me tell you, it is pretty bad. There are even some upgrades in the game that you can pay for yourself, for your weapons, and for your suit, etc., and even increasing your inventory, which all of that is nice for those upgrades. But boy, they do get expensive actually quite quickly. But we have unsteady aim, so you can actually pay for some upgrades to make that aim more steady, but it's for each specific weapon. It's not just for the overall, it's for each specific weapon. So you almost feel like you're doubling down on trying to aim. And it is expensive to begin with after the first couple of payments. There's also jump scares in the game, of course, because it's a horror game. There's also random noises as well, and sometimes they'll toy with you a little bit. There's cats in the game, which, they're okay so far. And then the other aspect is that things will kind of like randomly tip over sometimes, or you'll hear things, but nothing's really there. So they do toy with you a little bit there. There's also, of course, those limited resources, and then there's ambush points. So all of the mechanics that they have in the game to kind of create this anxiety and this stress, to kind of create this horror genre. And again, you can see what they're doing. You can see what they're trying to accomplish there. But the thing that's missing is the psychological part of the horror, which is what horror actually is. It's psychological. So it just doesn't feel all completely tied together. And what is really missing is seeing what's happening with others. Through a lot of the game, we have basically it's just you. There's some cats, and then of course there's enemies, and we get to listen to audio logs. We get to see some bloodstains on the floor, and we get to, and there's a few like psychological elements, like a pail or a bucket tipping over, right, when nothing was there, or noises that we can't necessarily pinpoint in the game. Okay, so there's some of that, but like when I think back to like Alfred Hitchcock movies, or like the Dead Space game, or Still Wakes the Deep was another game, or thinking of The Thing from John Carpenter, or even The Shining. These movies, these forms of entertainment focused on a psychological effect by letting you see what happens through the eyes of someone else. And then you can transpose yourself into thinking and being like, okay, what would that be like? What would that be like for me? And then that's where the psychological horror happens. It happens in your head. It's not necessarily on the screen. It actually happens in your mind. And this is where phobias come from and everything else. And so the fact that this psychological element so far is missing in the game makes me disappointed. And I really wish there was some kind of that level. Let me give some examples, okay? Like Alien Romulus. This is a newer movie. It's part of the Alien series. And again, they work on showing what happens to people when they get infested, right? Okay, when there's facehuggers around, when there's other aliens around, we get to see that. And like with the game Alien Isolation, which I think is over 10 years now, which is kind of insane. But like with Alien Isolation, again, you don't really get to see anybody else. It's just you, just like in Chronos the New Dawn so far. But the thing is that the IP is already established. You've already seen the movies, you've already played some of the other games. Okay, you've maybe read some of the other types of entertainment and media out there, and it's like you already know psychologically what stuff is like. It's the same too with like Halo, the first Halo game, and interacting with the Flood for the first time. You just get to see what the Flood does to everybody while you're in a cutscene, and you're like, holy frick. And then you're in the middle of a firefight, and you're like, oh my gosh. And it's hilarious watching people see Halo and fight the Flood for the first time. But in playing Chronos the New Dawn, there just isn't any of that. When we look at Alfred Hitchcock, it's the same thing. Taking an environment, looking at it through someone else's eyes or in their shoes. When we take a look at Dead Space, you're running into different characters. Not a lot of them, but you're running into different characters where you can tell their mind is literally broken, right? And they're committing the sue in the game because things are so crazy, or they have this like manic laughter, and you're just like, okay, yeah, something is like really off here. And yeah, you have those psychological aspects of the game while you're thinking about it while walking down a quiet or silent hallway, right? And then the jump scares and the sounds, it amplifies all of that psychology in your head. But again, I feel like Chronos the New Dawn fails to execute on that. And that's quite frustrating for me. There's also performance issues with the game. I've read and taken a look at some reviews already for Chronos the New Dawn, and some of them are like, yeah, performance mode is great. And I have to disagree with that on Series X because while I'm playing, I can see some of the jittering and the stuttering, especially when I'm spinning my camera around and I'm engaging in some combat, especially when there's at least two enemies. If there's one enemy, I don't necessarily see it every time. But I can certainly tell with two. And when there's more than that, absolutely, there is some stuttering there and some performance drops. And of course, this is made in Unreal Engine 5. And I've already been talking about that at length. If you're interested in a video, I'll link that at the end screen at the end, so that of why I'm just fed up with Unreal Engine 5. It's gotten so frustrating, and I have some examples that I show on the screen. But two, like the performance issues, roughly we're somewhere between 50 and 60 in performance mode, which is nice. Quality mode, I can't really tell, to be honest. Again, like for most things. And my TV is an LG C4 from 2024, if you're curious. That's what I have, and it's like 55 inches. It's pretty big. So I should be able to see a difference in quality mode, but again, I don't necessarily really see that. It's still too blurry, or just as blurry, or whatever. And then the performance can drop down to roughly 40 frames per second, which can be pretty frustrating. Luckily, that isn't as often, but definitely when you're in an open environment, when you're spinning the camera and there's more openish, I would just say openish. It's not even open areas; it's just openish areas. And I wonder too if this is why they partly kept the environments dark, or why we have a sandstorm in the next section that I'm in, is because they're trying to maintain that performance level of trying to stay around 60. Because if I'm able to be outside and see an entire environment, the game's going to freak, and I'm probably going to crash. It's not really going to be able to run. So that too is a little frustrating. And yeah, you get those jumps from 40s to 50s all the time when you're playing, when you're engaging in combat, and when you're walking around different areas. So that is pretty frustrating. And again, Unreal Engine 5, it's not necessarily their problem. It's just that, and I agree with Sweeney on this, is that it's the devs don't know when and how to necessarily optimize for the game, and there's not enough time put into that. And so then we have these performance issues. And again, this is not just necessarily on console. This is also on PC too. And we continue to see this with basically every single Unreal Engine game this year. It was a little teeny bit with Expedition 33, but Expedition 33 actually held pretty well through a lot of the playthrough that I had, which was, 15 hours, something like that. It actually held pretty good. But like Metal Gear Solid Delta, Borderlands 4, Chronos the New Dawn, Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, Black Myth Wukong, Oblivion Remaster. All of these have performance issues, and some of them are a little different, but relatively, you see these drops in performance, you see these drops in frames during your gameplay. Sometimes it's really, really bad. Sometimes it's bad enough to actually crash the game. So yeah, Unreal Engine needs to get ahead of this because they're the ones being blamed for it, but it's not necessarily their fault. It's just the devs don't necessarily know how to use and optimize that engine specifically, which is probably a little different than the Cry engine or the Teardrop or Unity or all of the others that are out there. So roughly the cost is $60. I personally don't believe it's worth that cost in the state that it's in. And again, this is because of the performance, which hopefully they'll work on that a little bit over time. And then also the lack of psychological horror. Again, it's so frustrating for me because all of the elements are there in the game. You can totally see what they're going for. And I'm not saying people can't enjoy the game. I'm still enjoying the game. It's just not a high end like 9 out of 9, 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10 game for me, right? This is more like maybe a 5 or a 6 out of 10 right now for me through the time that I've played so far. And again, it's because of that psychological horror aspect is missing for me. And the psychology is what ties horror all together and all of those elements. And those elements are to amplify. But again, if the psychology aspect is missing, there's really nothing left to amplify. So I've gotten a little bit bored. I kind of know what to expect. I can see some of the mechanics and stuff. And so now it's more of like a survival game instead of an actual horror game. So that's kind of frustrating. What I would actually pay for this game is roughly $40 or $50. And I will be doing a final review, and maybe my view will change. But I wanted to get this out there roughly within the first month, just to let people know with where I stand with the game, with what I'm seeing, with what my opinions are, and to get that out there. Currently, with VG charts, we've seen that globally, within their first couple of weeks, they had about 200,000 in global sales. And honestly, that's not enough. Taking a look at the game, no, it's in Unreal Engine 5. Cronos the New Dawn is probably on a budget of tens of millions of dollars, and then there's also marketing on top of that. So they're going to need some money coming through the door. And if they're charging, 60, or like with the deluxe edition, $70, doing some math, they're maybe at a point where they're somewhere between $14 to $20 million in current sales right now. And I'm sure they've sold a few more copies. Again, I don't necessarily know how much. I don't have those updated numbers. Maybe we'll never have any more updated numbers after this. Sometimes that'll happen. But I imagine they need, 40 or 50 million to pull in just to break even. So to get to that point, we'd need to sell like 1.5, but to be safe. We'd roughly need about 1 million in sales at current MSRP, and that would probably cover it. That would probably help the studio break even, because there's also marketing too. And again, we'll probably never know exactly what the budget is, how much they spent on marketing or anything like that. And while I like Bloober Team, they've made some good games in the past, I do feel like they missed the mark on this one. And I just think it's going to be kind of a hard push to get to that 1 million sales. So I hope they do. I hope they can. Again, I like the work that they do, and I think this too can be a learning experience for them. But it is frustrating to see that the psychological aspect really isn't there, like I've seen in other games or in other movies or TV shows. And they have a new IP. I don't think we'll see a Cronos the New Dawn 2, which I think we could have if it was done really, really well, but maybe 2 that also wasn't within the scope of actually making this game. So I am curious what their next project is going to be. But yeah, just that psychological element there, and then the performance issues on top of it. Yeah, I roughly have to give this a 5 to a 6 out of 10 right now. And yeah, hopefully they can hit at least 1 million in sales to somewhat break even, or at least be close to breaking even. But to actually make profit, they probably need 1.5 to 2 million in sales. And I'm not sure if they're going to get there, which is, kind of a bummer. So if you wish, I am playing this currently. Again, you guys voted for this. You guys can watch me at Twitch at Don't Tread on Thee if you'd like. And I'm playing through the entire game. And everything is actually saved at Gaming Garbage 22 over at YouTube, and I have a playlist for it. That's pretty easy to find on my playlist tab on my channel. And if you enjoy playlists, there's other stuff there too that I've done. And then you guys also will be able to vote in January for the next game that I'm going to fully review. Um, yeah, I'm kind of thinking already of what games I would like to put into the poll. And then, yeah, ultimately you guys get to vote. So we're just going to have one poll open for roughly, a couple of weeks. And we're going to do, yeah, whichever game wins is what we're going to play. And if it's a tie, I'll get to decide. So with that, folks, thanks for tuning in. Again, you can always follow me at GamingGarbage22. There's a lot of stuff that I have on the channel. And again, if something isn't for you, don't sweat it. Just wait for the next video, as there's various content every single week. And the reason I have various content is because I'm trying to capture a well-roundedness of the games industry. So we have deep dives. We talk about the gaming news, me, myself, and I. And then, of course, we have playthroughs and initial looks and reviews when I can do those. And then, too, again, you can follow me at Twitch. And if you'd like to watch me play Chronos, the new Dawn, or you just like to watch it there first unedited completely, go ahead and sub there. And I don't have a regular schedule, but yeah, just make sure you have that notification on to let you guys know when I'm streaming. So with that, folks, hopefully you guys are doing well. Winter is around the corner. We got some storms pushing around. Just again, another really big earthquake over in the Philippines. And we have some volcanic activity too in certain parts of the world. So please, just be aware, just be safe out there. And we'll get through, depending on what side of the world you're on, we'll get through the winter, the coming winter and the coming summer together. So with that, folks, I'll see you guys on the next one.